They said I was family, that I'd always have a place with them, that I wasn't a burden. Funny how fast people change once you're no longer useful to them. My name is Linda Harrington, and I'm 62 years old. I'm a widow, a quiet woman, or so people assume, but I wasn't always this quiet. Grief made me quieter, betrayal made me sharper. 3 years ago, I lost my sister, Beth, to a sudden stroke. She was my best friend, my younger shadow, the one person who truly understood me. Her death hit me like a train. I had no children of my own. Beth's daughter, Marissa, was the closest I had to family, and when Marissa called to say, "Aunt Linda, you shouldn't be alone in that big house," I believed her. She and her husband, Nathan, insisted I move in with them. They had space. They had kids who would love to have Grandma Linda around. I wasn't technically their grandmother, but I understood the sentiment. And to be honest, I didn't want to be alone either. My house felt too quiet, too haunted. So I packed my things, sold the home my husband and I had built together, and moved into their sunny 2-story suburban house full of noise, color, and what I hoped would be warmth. For a little while, I helped with the children morning drop-offs, lunches, reading bedtime stories. I cooked most nights, cleaned, paid for the groceries without the masking. I even covered their car repairs once. When Nathan's truck wouldn't start before a work trip, I didn't say anything. I just handed him a check. That was my quiet generosity. But after the first year, something shifted. They started calling me forgetful. Not in a concerned way, more like a joke. They'd exchange glances when I told a story, or gently correct me when I misremembered a date. Once, Nathan even laughed and said, "Better get that memory checked, Aunt Elle, you're not 40 anymore." I brushed it off. I told myself I was being sensitive. Grief can do that, make you see shadows in soft corners. But then came the birthday dinner, or rather, the one I wasn't invited to. I found out about the dinner on accident. It was Nathan's 40th birthday, and 4 weeks. Marissa had been acting busy, distracted. I figured she was planning something special. I even offered to help. "Oh, it's nothing big," she said, waving me off. "Just a night out with a few of his friends from work." So that Friday evening, I stayed home with the kids while they ran errands. I made macaroni and cheese, read bedtime stories, and put both boys to sleep by 8 p.m. At 8:47 p.m. I opened Facebook to check messages from an old colleague. That's when I saw Marissa had gone live. The caption read, "Happy 40th to the love of my life. So grateful to celebrate you with everyone who matters most." I clicked on the video. There she was, beaming, in a cocktail dress. Nathan, in a navy blazer, stood beside her with a whiskey in hand. They were in a private dining room, filled with people I recognized. Nathan's parents, Marissa's college friends, their neighbors, even Nathan's boss, and me. I was at home, wiping applesauce off a toddler's pajamas. I watched the video in stunned silence as they toasted, laughed, posed for pictures, passed around a cake I hadn't even known existed. At one point, Marissa panned the camera across the room and said, "Couldn't ask for a better tribe." That word, tribe, cut deeper than I care to admit. I didn't sleep that night. I kept playing the video on loop, trying to figure out how I'd gone from loved family member to what babysitter maid placeholder. The next morning, Marissa acted like nothing happened. She thanked me for watching the kids, said they'd just grabbed a bite and kept things low-key. I nodded and smiled, pretending not to know she'd live-streamed the whole thing. But inside me, something was cracking. It wasn't just the exclusion. It was the growing realization that I had made a terrible mistake, one that was about to cost me everything I had left. Things got worse after that night. Subtle things. At first, they started locking the office door. Not that I had any reason to go in there, but it used to be where I helped pay bills, handled groceries, even filed their taxes last year. Suddenly, it was off limits. "Nathan's working from home more now," Marissa explained with a sweet smile. "He needs focus." Then came the concerns about my health. I'd forget to turn off the kettle. Once, I left the back porch light on overnight. Harmless things, really. But Marissa brought them up, often, always, with a tilt of the head and a voice dripping with false worry. "Aunt Linda, have you talked to your doctor lately? You've seemed off." "I'm fine," I said, because, sometimes, older people don't realize when they're declining. "I read this article." I cut her off. "I'm not declining, I'm grieving." But she didn't hear me, because she didn't care. One night, I passed the open office door on my way to the kitchen. They were inside, speaking in low voices. "She's not going to last much longer," Nathan said. "She's barely keeping up." Marissa hissed. "She'll hear you." "She won't. She doesn't even know what day it is, half the time." "I think we need to push her," Marissa said. "If we can get her into assisted living, we could convert the guest room. Maybe finally get that gym set up." I stopped breathing. They were talking about me, planning for me, as if I were furniture to be moved, stored, forgotten. I stood there in the hallway, my fingers trembling against the wall, not with weakness, with rage. Because now, I knew the truth. I wasn't family to them. I was a placeholder until they could figure out how to get rid of me. What they didn't know was that I still had one final card left to play. That night, I didn't cry. I went into my room, locked the door, and pulled out an old metal box from the bottom of my suitcase. Inside were legal documents, keys, and a USB drive. It was the last thing my husband Mark gave me before he passed. He had been the real estate mind in the family. While I taught high school literature, he quietly built a small empire buying properties, flipping some, renting others. We never lived flashy, but we were smart, practical, and private. Before he died, Mark transferred control of our holding company and H Property Group LLC to me. I hadn't touched it in years. Most of the properties were managed through our lawyer and stayed rented. I received passive income, enough to retire on comfortably. But one address stood out on the property list: 234 Rosewood Drive. I stared at it in disbelief. That was their house. I scrolled through the ownership file. The property had been bought at auction years ago under the LLC. Marissa and Nathan were renting it through a local management company under a 5-year lease. They had no idea I was the one they were paying rent to every month. Mark had done that, deliberately kept our names off any direct paperwork, filtered everything through trust accounts and P.O. boxes. He never liked Nathan, said he smelled entitled. My hands trembled, not from age, but from adrenaline. They wanted me gone. Fine, I would leave, but not quietly. I opened my laptop and emailed Mr. Calloway, our family attorney. Subject: immediate action request, Rosewood Property. Hi Carl, I'd like to discuss the termination clause in the current lease at 234 Rosewood. Please advise on how soon we can issue notice for breach, specifically unauthorized occupancy and hostile behavior toward the primary property beneficiary, myself. I clicked send. Then I sat back, heart pounding, a small, sharp smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. If they thought the burden was going to quietly disappear, they were about to learn what 62 years of quiet observation and strategic patience could really do. Mr. Calloway responded the next morning. Linda, I reviewed the lease agreement. Based on your residency and their documented behavior, particularly your status as both beneficiary and named board member of the holding company, we can absolutely issue a 40-day termination notice for breach of lease. Would you like me to draft it today? I replied with the single word, yes. Later that afternoon, while Marissa was out running errands and Nathan was in the backyard arguing with the internet provider, a courier arrived with a manila envelope. I accepted it, signed, and placed it neatly in the center of the kitchen island. When Marissa came home, I was baking cornbread. She was on the phone, laughing loudly, until her eyes landed on the envelope. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" she asked, flipping it open. I watched her expression change from confusion to disbelief to anger. "You're evicting us," she shrieked, voice breaking. I took off my oven mitts and faced her calmly. "I'm enforcing the lease. You can't do that. This is our home." "No, sweetheart," I said, softly but firmly. "It's my property. You pay rent to a company I legally own, and as per the lease terms, which you signed without reading, I'm within my rights to terminate tenancy under grounds of hostile environment and breach of trust." She stood frozen, clutching the letter like it was a bomb. Nathan came in, moments later, sweaty and confused. "What's going on?" "She's kicking us out," Marissa snapped. "She owns the house." He stared at me. "This is a joke, right?" I tilted my head. "Do I look like I'm joking, Nathan?" He started yelling, talking about betrayal, how I was tearing the family apart. Family. The same family that wanted me out, into a nursing home. Forgotten. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just said, "You have 30 days to vacate, and I suggest you start packing." Then I went back to my cornbread like it was any other Thursday afternoon. The days that followed were deliciously quiet, tense, yes, but quiet. Nathan stopped stomping around like he owned the place. Marissa avoided me entirely. No more sarcastic comments about my forgetfulness. No more closed-door whispers or conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. They still thought I was being petty, cruel, that I was taking revenge for a few mean comments. They didn't realize this wasn't revenge, this was clarity. I was finally treating them the way they had treated me from the moment I moved in, like I didn't matter, like I was disposable. And now, for the first time, they understood that I held the power all along. On the second week, they tried to fight it. Nathan emailed the property management company, which, again, funneled back to me claiming I was mentally unwell, and that I'd forged the documents. Mr. Calloway shut that down in under 24 hours, with a reply so legally ironclad it could have held up a suspension bridge. Then came the guilt. Marissa cornered me in the kitchen one morning. "Aunt Linda, you're really going to make us homeless." I stirred my tea calmly. "You could have told us," she said, blinking fast, voice cracking. "We would have treated you differently." "Exactly. You shouldn't have needed to," I said. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "I loved you like a daughter. I took care of your children, your home, your meals. I gave without keeping score, but you treated me like I was fading, like I was already gone." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt relief, because I was finally telling the truth out loud. "And now," I added gently, "I'm just making sure that I never fade again. Not for you, not for anyone." The final week before move-out day was a whirlwind. They didn't speak to me again, not really. Nathan spent most of his time on the phone, angrily talking to lawyers who couldn't help him. Marissa packed with robotic precision. The kids were confused. Of course, I stayed out of their way. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of adult arrogance and entitlement. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. 3 days before they were due to vacate, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. A real estate agent stepped out, clipboard in hand. I met her on the porch. "Linda," she asked, offering a smile. "I'm Kendra, from Haven Realty. Mr. Calloway said you'd be meeting me. I'll be showing the property starting Monday," she continued. "You've got great bones here. Fresh paint, upgraded fixtures." I nodded. "It's well cared for. I handled most of the maintenance myself." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "You're the owner," I smiled. "Yes, for a while." Now, behind me, I could hear Marissa slam a cabinet. She'd heard good that evening. I sat on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the tree line. The air was cool, quiet, the kind of silence that used to feel like loneliness, but now felt like peace. I thought about Mark, my late husband, and the long nights we used to spend in properties just like this, eating takeout on the floor and laughing about how we had no idea what we were doing. He always believed in the power of playing the long game. "You don't have to swing hard," he used to say. "Just know when to swing at all." And this was the perfect swing. Move Out Day arrived on a Saturday morning. I didn't plan to watch, but I found myself standing at the upstairs window, sipping my tea, as the U-Haul backed into the driveway. Nathan did most of the lifting, face red and tense, jaw clenched like he was chewing nails. Marissa didn't even glance toward the house. She moved quickly, quietly, keeping her head down as if the weight of shame was heavier than the boxers. They didn't say goodbye. That was fine. I wasn't expecting closure from people who had only ever seen me as an accessory to their convenience. Once they were gone, I walked through the now empty house, room by room. There were scuff marks on the floors, leftover crayon drawings on the back of the closet door, and a forgotten plastic dinosaur wedged under the baseboard heater in the boys' room. I smiled. Memories, yes, but not regrets. I could have let it go, I suppose. I could have just moved out and disappeared, let them continue their lives with no confrontation, no consequences. But here's the thing people don't understand about women like me. We don't break quietly, we rebuild loudly. I called Kendra, the realtor, that afternoon, and told her to hold the listing. I was keeping the house, not to spite them, not even because it was mine, but because it felt good to choose something for me for once. A few days later, I unpacked my suitcases, arranged my books on the built-in shelves, and opened the windows to let in fresh spring air. This was my home now, not because someone gave it to me, because I took it back. It's been 6 months since I reclaimed this house. Funny how different it feels when you know no one's waiting for you to leave, when every cupboard, every squeaky stair, every breeze through the window belongs to you. I painted the guest room lavender and turned it into a reading nook. I planted marigolds along the walkway. Mark always said they looked like little suns, and every Sunday morning, I sit out back with my tea and the newspaper, listening to bird song instead of whispers. Sometimes, neighbors ask if I missed them, Marissa and Nathan. If I regret what I did, here's the truth: I don't, because I've learned that age doesn't make you irrelevant. It makes you dangerous if you've been paying attention for years. I gave everything I had: time, money, love, with no expectations. But when people show you who they really are, believe them the first time. I wasn't a burden, I was their backbone. And when they tried to toss me aside like a used-up appliance, I reminded them I was the one holding the deed. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated, cast aside, treated like you were invisible? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story, because if mine proves anything, it's that you're never too old to stand up for yourself. And before you go, I'm leaving 2 more powerful stories on the screen, both about women who are done being silent. Thanks for staying with me to the end, and remember, they only get away with it if you let them.